I think Seder's a grifter.
He may have issues with me personally. That's fine. I don't care at all.
I mean, have you pulled a Rubin, as some people suggest?
So I feel like it's come to a point where we now have a lot more clarity about the TYT situation, specifically their right-wing pivot. And I now know where this disconnect is specifically coming from between them and us. And I debated about whether or not to even talk about this again, because I don't want people to think that I'm trying to rehash drama. But in my mind, this isn't just about drama any longer. To TYT, they view this as a competition to maintain hegemony in this space because Cenk, Uygur, and Anna Kasparian presumably feel as if they've been usurped in some ways by the likes of Hasan Piker, as well as Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland. And they kind of have. I mean, Majority Report is just a better, more principled version of TYT, and more people are coming to that same realization, and Cenk is taking notice. He's jealous, I think, that Majority Report is eating his lunch because he's always viewed TYT as the champion of the progressive left on YouTube, and he still wants ownership over this space, but he's starting to lose it, and he's mad about that. And he's especially mad that he's losing dominance to people in particular that he probably views as inferior. Now, I don't know what's in his mind, but this is the way it comes across to me. I mean, Majority Report, they used to be part of TYT's network. I was also part of TYT network. So in some ways, I think that Cenk feels like we owe him our success, even though we don't. We built platforms and then joined TYT network because we were popular. But regardless, you know, he thinks that we shouldn't challenge his political orthodoxy because we should be paying him fealty and thanking him because he feels responsible for our success. Or at a minimum, you know, he feels like we should be thankful that he created a model that we replicate today. He walked so we can run, in other words, but we're not giving him what he believes is owed to him. Now, to be clear, I don't view other people in this space as competition like Cenk views us as competition. I think that a win for David Dole is a win for me. When Lance of the Serfs gets 10,000 new subscribers, that's a win for me too, because we're not competitors in my mind. We're colleagues who are working towards the same goal, and a win for one of us is a win for all of us. Cenk, however, I don't think he views this space in that way. Maybe he did, but he certainly doesn't now. To him, this is a competition, and he wants TYT to come out on top. He wants to carry the mantle of the online left forever, and he wants to set the agenda and establish the parameters that the rest of us have to abide by. But I mean, I reject that mentality. Others in this space do too. And to him, he views this as a sort of rebellion against him. And in response, he's melted down repeatedly and tried to reassert himself as the true leader of this space while insisting that we should all bow down to him because his ego is bruised and he can't tolerate people calling him out for his dogshit takes. So I guess what I'm ultimately getting to is what's happening here is three things. We're seeing hubris, a politics of self-grievance, and mixed messaging from the network. And that's what's creating this disconnect between them and us. And over the course of this video, I'm going to demonstrate that case to you. So first and foremost, let's talk about the mixed messages, because that is the lowest common denominator that's driving all of this drama, if you want to call it that, because TYT, they brand themselves as home of progressives, yet repeatedly they undermine that branding with centrist and even right-wing counter messaging. And when people call it out, and they say, hey, that's not very progressive, he'll respond by dismissing their criticism and reasserting himself as the true arbiter of truth on the left, but he never actually addresses the substance of our claims, and he refuses to reconcile the mixed messaging that we're all seeing. For example, when Anna Kasparian went on Jillian Michaels' show, the thumbnail plays up her right-wing pivot and asks if she's leaving the left, and it even says, you know, why I left the left in a quote. Now, when she went on Piers Morgan, look at the way that he introduced her as well.
So has Anna Kasparian left the left? Let's find out. She joins me now. Anna, welcome to your uncensored debut.
Yeah, but to be fair, Anna can't control the thumbnails and the framing on other people's channels. But I mean, these shows are playing up that narrative for a reason. And while she's lead into it more than Cenk, he's continuing to deny it and feigns outrage whenever he's called out for it. But Cenk has at times leaned into it and he's played footsie with the right. but he still wants to maintain dominance over the leftist space when he's very clearly moving away from that. For example, he tweeted, "I've been trying to figure out why I'm more optimistic now than I was before the election, even though I was so against the guy that won. I know now, MAGA is not my mortal enemy, and neither is the extreme left. My mortal enemy is the establishment, and they have been defeated." Sure, because the electoral victory of a billionaire fascist who's stacking his cabinet full of neocons and other billionaires is certainly evidence that the establishment has been defeated. Cool. But I mean, if we call that out and say, hey, that's pretty fucking stupid, we're just drama farming, or we're too dumb to understand the 40 chess moves that he's making to trick the right into giving us the policies that we want. But I'm sorry, not a lot of lefties are going to endorse that weird, narcissistic, and self-serving strategy that he's pursuing currently. And if you're going to purport to represent the true left, as you say you do, people are going to object to these kinds of things if they feel like it reflects poorly on them. I'm not the one who's claiming that I represent the entire left. You are. So if you're going to claim to have a monopoly on truth and strategic wisdom in this space, people are going to push back on you when they say things that they feel is not representative of the left, when they feel like you're a bad example of what a leftist is or should be. I mean, even if, though, we were perfectly ideologically aligned, I'll admit, I still wouldn't want Cenk to represent the left because, quite frankly, he comes off as unhinged and unserious. I mean, he had a vanity presidential run to hawk his fucking book. That's embarrassing. And I think that other people better represent our collective values. But with that being said, nobody is trying to claim ownership of this space like Cenk does. Sam Seder, I view as the true leader of the online left, but he's not saying he's the one true leftist. He allows disagreements and pushback. But I mean, if Sam Seder were to push back and criticize Cenk, Cenk would take that as evidence, not that, he's putting forward this good faith criticism, but instead as evidence that he's trying to replace Cenk as the new de facto leader of this space when it's really not that deep. If Sam Seder criticizes Cenk, if I criticize Cenk, I'm just disagreeing. And I'm trying to get you to see my point of view because I think that you have a big platform and you can use it more effectively. But I mean, Cenk doesn't see it that way, and it's a problem. And throughout Cenk's stream with Hasan, which was incredibly long, he tried to claim ownership again and again of this leftist space, but he doesn't realize that TYT has lost the credibility that they once had by repeatedly shifting to the right and shitting on the left and playing footsie with fascists. Case in point.
I watched your conversation with Matt Walsh today. I thought it was a good conversation. I haven't seen that film at all, but I mean, he touches on something that's very real.
I watched your conversations with Ben Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
And you inspired me to have that conversation with Matt Walsh.
Yeah.
How dare you accuse us of shifting to the right? I mean, I'm only complimenting a self-proclaimed theocratic fascist for touching on a very real issue ignored by the left, but I'm not going right-wing, ooh. It's just so fucking disingenuous. And they think that we're stupid and naive and can't see what's happening, that we can't see what's already happened before multiple times on this same network. And just for shits and giggles, look at how she responded when Piers Morgan asked her if she's now doing what she criticized Dave Rubin of doing. And her answer, I think, was very illuminating.
This is what you said when Dave Rubin pivoted. Let's have a look.
There has been this prevalence of prominent figures who identify as the left, right, or on the left, who then later start to, cozy up to right-wing figures, and then it turns out that they completely move to the right wing because they're essentially paid to do it. They're used as tools by the right wing to essentially spew right-wing talking points while purporting to still be on the left. In fact, Dave Rubin's a great example of that. Dave Rubin used to work with us. He identified as someone on the left.
So, I mean, have you pulled a Rubin, as some people suggest?
I mean, I'm still pretty left-wing, and I'm still working at the exact same place. Look, I don't know. Maybe I was wrong about Dave Rubin, but I just felt that he, first of all, after he left TYT, he did lie about us, and that bothered me because we were still friends, and I didn't understand what was going on.
And that, my friends, is where we get the politics of self-grievance. It's on full display because she's inadvertently admitting that she never really took issue with Dave Rubin's right-wing grift because what he was espousing was dangerous. The real problem to her was that she felt like her friend had betrayed her. And the more that she talks over a length of time, like going on different shows, the more it becomes abundantly clear that her pivot in part is fueled by personal grievance. There's a viral clip making the rounds on Twitter of her talking about how her entire opinion of Trump supporters changed because of this one Trump supporting neighbor that she talked to, Jeff. He was nice to her. And that's so weird. I find this worldview very bizarre because, I mean, I have family members who voted for Donald Trump. I've never been in a leftist or liberal echo chamber or bubble. You know, my MAGA family members, they're ostensibly nice if you talk to them, but just don't ask them about their views on immigrants or trans people, because then they're not going to sound so nice. You know, maybe Anna can put aside those issues because she's not an immigrant or she's not trans. I mean, I know that her family is immigrants, but she herself is not at risk of deportation. So maybe she can put that aside. But for a lot of us, that disagreement is fundamental to who we are as human beings. So we can't put it aside. But in her mind, the left right now is being mean to her, while a right-winger and many right-wingers are being nice to her. Therefore, her worldview must have been flawed. And I'm obviously making an assumption that this is how she's operating, at least on a subconscious level, when I don't know for sure. But I mean, this politics of personal grievance is bad if it is what she's doing, because it is inevitably how you become a reactionary. Because rather than looking at the macro, you base your entire worldview on personal anecdotes, which is going to fail you. And this isn't unique to TYT or Anna Kasparian. They're not the first to do this. A lot of people have this view. It's why I always have been overly nice and apologetic to friends and family, to the point where I kind of became a doormat, because basically every single person in my real life who I know, I am the only gay person that they've ever known. So their interaction with me could shape their perception of all gay people. And that horrifies me, because I don't want to represent an entire group of people. I'm just one member of a very large community that is not a monolith. And I don't want someone's entire worldview to be colored by this one interaction that they have with me, where maybe I'm an asshole or I lose my temper, because I'm not perfect. And that responsibility that I felt I had, it ate away at me for most of my life, until I realized I can't live that way. You know, I can't base my own self-worth on other people's personal grievances, right? I'm one person, and if somebody starts to hate gay people because I was mean to them, or I forgot to say bless you after they sneezed or some shit, that's their problem. That's not my problem. But Cenk and Anna have presumably shifted away their focus to their own personal grievances and not on the actual policy and the data themselves. The left thinks that they're, too right-wing on crime. So what do? They become mad and they lean into that despite the left and prove them wrong, because they can never admit that they're wrong. If the left says that they're not supportive enough of trans people, what do? Well, they get mad and they lean into that too until they're validated and we're invalidated. It's how they've been operating for the past year or so. It's an immature way to view the world, but I mean, it's presumably what's driving them. And I don't know, again, for sure what's in their hearts and in their minds, but they kind of admit a lot that personal grievances is what's driving their behavior. The right has been nice to them lately and the left has been mean to them. So they go on right-wing shows and avoid the leftist mafia and Sam Seder like the plague. That's what it looks like to me. So, I mean, it could be wrong, but that's what a lot of us are kind of seeing. And on the topic of personal grievances, when Anna made her birthing person tweet, she privately told me that she felt like she was being publicly bashed by people like myself and presumably others in this space who she considered friends. In other words, it wasn't what we said, it was where we said it. Even though we were respectful, the fact that we disagreed publicly with her, it felt like a betrayal. And in response, she felt compelled to double down, so that way her friends who she felt like betrayed her wouldn't win, so she would be proven right. Now, she was asked about that birthing person tweet on Piers Morgan, and she did downplay the hatred she received. That's her word. It's an interesting choice of words to use when we were all very respectful, if you go back and watch the videos that we did about this. But regardless, she goes on to comment about trans rights and ultimately sends another mixed message.
You also got blowback when you posted, "I'm a woman. Please don't ever refer to me as a person with a uterus or a person who menstruates." How do people not realize how degrading this is? You can support the transgender community without doing this shit. And I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I did not expect that tweet to go as viral as it did. I didn't expect the kind of hatred I got in response to it. But look, that's okay. It's fine, right? I'm a public figure, and whether I like it or not, I signed up for any type of, harassment, abuse, whatever that you get online as a result of stating your opinions. Look, the main point I want to make about the transgender community is that these are human beings, okay? They deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. And when it comes to any issue that has a real impact on their lives, housing, employment, all of that, there should be protection for this community, and we should respect the fact that they're human beings.
Now, if she just stopped talking right there, I think that maybe she actually learned from that whole birthing person kerfuffle, but she didn't stop. She kept talking and proved that we were all right to call her out because she was indeed going down a turf path, as many of us suspected, and we tried to intervene to stop that, but we've arrived at this point now.
At the same time, there are some issues that arise where the rights of one group, in this case, the transgender community, kind of conflicts with the rights of another group, the rights of women. And what I think is important is that we actually have a real dialogue, a civil dialogue, about how we move forward in a way where both parties feel that they're being treated fairly and with dignity.
So she's just A.K. Rowling at this point. We have officially arrived in turf territory where she is portraying trans rights as antithetical to women's rights in some areas. She's viewing this as a zero-sum game. If trans women have rights and are welcomed into women's spaces as they should be, to her, that's a net loss for cis women. And she's not specific here, but if you watch her video that she did about Sarah McBride and Nancy Mace, she talks about how dehumanizing it was for Nancy Mace to try to police the bathroom usage of the one trans lawmaker. But in one part of the video towards the end, she drops a little turf comment about how, it does get a little bit more tricky when we're talking about locker rooms.
Look, I want to be specific in noting that I do not have a problem at all with transgender people using the restrooms, the bathrooms that they identify with. The other single-sex facilities like locker rooms, I think, does get a little tricky.
She just drops that in there as she's trying to be an ally to trans people. She had to bring that up as if trans people are the predators who pose a threat to women when they are disproportionately vulnerable to sexual abuse themselves. But I mean, this right here is the future we all saw when we made that birthing person response to her, or when we responded to her birthing person tweet, I should say. And as her friends, we tried to stop her from going down this path, but apparently it was already too late. And I guess we also underestimated how open she would be to criticism because she does not like fucking being criticized. So we're seeing this collision of grievance politics and mixed messaging where she'll aesthetically present herself as a trans ally, then substantively say something that is objectively transphobic, but since she rejects our claim that she's being anti-trans, it activates the politics of grievances, where she'll then try to double down and further insulate herself in the right-wing bubble who's going to validate her turf concerns. And this is the cycle that's becoming more clear. I didn't spot it at first, but now it's much more clear after we've been seeing this again and again for the past year or so. And it's not just Anna, because on Hasan's Thanksgiving stream, Cenk Uygur sent the same mixed message about trans people, where he presented himself as a warrior for trans rights, but the caveat was that they don't get to be as equal as their cis peers. But if we reject that, that activates another cycle of grievance politics. So let's watch.
The reason I make a distinction between high school and professional sports is because in high school, what you're saying is, like Ohio, if I really want to institute this, even though it affects almost no trans or cis girls if in the world in Ohio as it is, but if I go to implement it, now I got to check everybody's genitals, and there's got to be a genital checker, right? And let me guess, tons of Republican older men are going to volunteer to check the genitals of our high school kids. And I hate it. I don't want it. It's like a groomer pervert factory. And they're going to probably put Jim Jordan in charge of it. No, okay? But when you get to the professional level, you get to the Olympic level, you guys make a giant mistake. You fall right into their trap. And you go, oh, yeah, sure, they should be able to compete. When the overwhelming majority of the American people do not agree with you, you should let the Olympics and the professional sports decide it on their own. It is not a constitutional right. They have no so-called right to participate in the WNBA. I don't have a right to participate in the NBA. So number one, I don't agree when you go to those extremes. And number two, does it affect elections? Well, we had an overwhelming answer to that in the Trump-Harris contest.
So in his mind, he's being perfectly reasonable, and he starts by making an argument that we all agree with, but he ends by making a transphobic argument that we don't agree with. And since he started with the pro-trans argument, since he led with that, he thinks it's outrageous to condemn the thing that he said that we don't agree with. But I'm sorry, you don't get to control what we're allowed to agree or disagree with, nor do you get to dictate what trans people should and shouldn't accept when it comes to their own humanity. And the argument that he uses is fallacious because, nobody is saying that there's a right to be in the WNBA. I don't know a single person who said that, right? Nor is trans sports the focus of trans activism, broadly speaking. But switch the group for a moment. Let's just say that I was rejected from the NBA because I'm gay. Would Cenk then say, oh, well, too bad, boo-hoo, you don't have a right to participate in the NBA? My guess is that he probably wouldn't say that because it's discrimination. If the basis of my rejection is sexual orientation alone, that is discrimination. It's not about whether or not I have a right to be in the NBA. It's about whether or not my inclusion or exclusion hinges on my sexual orientation. Now just replace gay with trans, and you see the problem. People shouldn't have less opportunities simply because they're trans. I mean, he's making a similar argument that conservatives used to make against gay marriage, where they'd say something like, gay people technically aren't being discriminated against because we all have the same rights. For example, I, as a straight man, cannot marry a man. Therefore, since gay men also can't marry men, then we have the same rights. Makes sense, right? It comes from a place of deliberate ignorance and denies the immutability of sexual orientation and gender identity. You can choose to not act on it, but you can never turn it off, right? You can choose to LARP as a straight man and marry a woman, but that doesn't change the fact that you're still gay. A trans person who never transitions is still trans because it is innate. But me making this counter-argument would be seen as an attack by Cenk since he prefaced his anti-trans statement with a pro-trans one. And one thing that he did throughout the entirety of that conversation with Hasan was bring up how he's the real left and we're all the fake left because his positions are popular and ours are unpopular. But first of all, I don't base my worldview on what is and isn't popular. I base it on what's right. Populism can be useful electorally, but it's not the basis of my ideology, and nobody should base their ideology on what's popular. Second of all, if we have a position that's unpopular, it is our job as political commentators to make those positions popular. If we preemptively capitulate to every policy that might be unpopular, or we adopt positions based on how we think the Republican Party will respond, we would never have any progress on any issue ever. As a gay man, I was born unpopular, baby. I'd have no rights today if my predecessors were too afraid to be bold, but thankfully they were bold. Stonewall was a literal riot. Gay rights activists shoved pies in the faces of bigots. They never ceded ground on civil unions or gay adoption. They rightfully demanded full equality. These were not popular positions at the time, but do you want to know what they did? They made them popular. I mean, Medicare for All was unpopular until Bernie Sanders ran for president and made it popular. But to be clear, we should boast about the popularity of our positions if the policies we're supporting are popular. But if they're not popular, we shouldn't run away from them, especially if we're political commentators, because then we're just setting ourselves up to be audience-captured fucking drones who just repeat what we think our audiences want to hear. When I'm making videos, I don't focus group test or poll test whatever the fuck I say. I just say what I believe, and if people disagree, then I defend my position, and if I think that they're making a good counter-argument, then I'll adjust. Now, Cenk would probably view what I'm saying as me being overly self-righteous or accuse me of engaging in purity politics, but I can't help the way that he perceives good faith criticism. And he might think that we're all making bad faith criticism and we're grifting, but it is good faith criticism. But no matter how hard we try to steelman him and be fair in our criticism and respectful, any response always sets up another cycle of grievance politics with a good dose of hubris as well, which was on full display during his stream with Hasan.
You are hyper focusing on people that are in your replies on Twitter, and because
so you agree
that's
with
all
me,
you,
that radical left
because
is bullshit,
all you interact,
stupid dumbasses. Do you agree?
There are a million people that are both in your replies that have also gotten mad at me as well, time and time again, on specific issues, maybe ones that even pertain to trans rights. It literally doesn't matter. people get very passionate, understanding. I'm very understanding.
Shocking agreement. I agree. There's 13 douchebags online. That's what I said from day one.
I know, but why the would you ever hyper focus on
but
people like
because
that?
Look, no. So you might be doing the right thing. Hold on.
You're doing the Bill Maher thing. You're demanding that there needs sisters.
Bullshit.
You're
Hold
doing
on,
the
let me
Sister
explain.
Soldier moment.
No,
That's it.
bullshit.
No, you're trying to.
Okay, so the minute we said the most reasonable things on earth, which you now agree with apparently, then what happened? It wasn't just the 13 douchebags online. And by the way, everybody said, no, those 13 douchebags represent all the left. You're not on the left anymore because the 13 douchebags control the left. And then what happened next? Then Majority Report jumped in, and Lance from the Serfs, and all the other little dirtbags jumped in, and they were like, no, Cenk and Anna are turning right. The 13 douchebags are right. We need to protect every trans person should get free surgery.
We got,
even in China, even though we don't have nothing to do with China, we hate them. They're Nazis.
You got to, okay.
I mean, I'm 100% right. Every dirtbag show did it.
You got to calm
Every
down.
dirtbag show did it. Tell me I'm wrong.
This is reframing an issue that is now we've moved away from the electoral consequences of a trans ad to your own personal anger and frustration that you have with left-wing media online. We are
so do you agree left-wing media online, those guys that I listed are full of shit?
I have
and in a tiny stupid minority?
I have disagreements with everyone in this space, but there's a reason why seemingly I don't catch the same amount of strays that you do because I don't hyper focus.
I can tell you why.
I don't hyper focus. What do you think it is?
They think you're hot, young. I don't mean attractive. God bless on that. Okay. I'm also obviously hot. I mean, as in they think, oh, the young people watch Hasan. He's cool. And you give the thing of like, oh, no, trans people are right on everything, right? You don't come out and make the distinctions that Anna and I made. Okay, so they think, oh, no, he's good. He's extreme as we are. I think he's woke left. Yay, extremeness.
I think the reason, first of all, you're...
Okay, by the way, Majority Report and all of you guys, you better attack him. He apparently agrees with me. Okay, you better attack him. You're not going to attack him, are you?
You're
There's a difference. And you're saying, no, don't crush them. Just let them fester and have people pretend that they're the real left. No, we don't do that. So if you're going to say stupid shit and you're going to try to punch us in the face, we're going to punch you back, not on our behalf, on behalf of Democratic voters who you are lying about. The Democratic voters do not agree with you. They agree with us. So sad day for you. And I'm not going to let you lie and pretend that Democratic voters are on your side because you're a liar, and they're not on your side. Do you agree that the Democratic voters are on my side?
I don't care what the Democratic voters are on, of whichever side they're on right now. We've lost the plot. We've completely lost the plot because now the conversation is about like the Serfs or Majority Report, and I think that's a completely and utterly unproductive conversation to have.
Your strategy is when grifters on the left attack you, whether it's
I don't think they're grifters.
I think Cedar's a grifter.
I disagree.
Okay. Oh, by the way, so now all of a sudden you're defending Cedar. When he calls me a grifter, you don't defend.
First of all, I've never heard him call you a grifter.
He's called me every name in the book. Okay. He's a low rent grifter.
Stop. And that right there is what it always comes back to for Cenk and Anna. Personal grievances again and again. And also, he has to be right about everything. And he not only has to be right about everything, everyone else has to affirm how right he is again and again, as evidenced by the fact that he kept trying to get Hasan to validate his positions. And you'll notice that he's responding to us, pointing out the mixed messaging that he's sending about their right-wing pivot, but he never actually engages with the critiques that we're making. Rather, he'll strawman what we're saying or accuse us of calling him a Nazi when I have no idea who's doing that or if anyone has actually called him a Nazi. If that's the case, I disagree. But I mean, this is where the hubris comes in. He thinks that he's too good to engage with our critiques because he's right and we're wrong and we're beneath him. It's why he refused, offers from us to talk about these issues on air or even behind the scenes. Because why should he engage with people who are inferior to him when he's already determined that he's right about everything and we're wrong about everything? And listen, I watched about 3 hours of that 3.5-hour stream, and it's clear that Cenk Uygur is just a centrist. I'm sorry. He might not want to admit that, but he's against affirmative action. He's selective on trans rights, moderate on abortion, cruel on homelessness, quite frankly, and he's center-right on crime. And I think that he's been able to kind of pass as a progressive all these years because he never really focused on those things and downplayed those elements of his ideology. But I mean, the reason why he's getting more pushback now is because he's leaning into the more conservative views that he claims he's always had, right? And he's using his platform to raise the salience of these issues, on issues like crime. And that is benefiting the right. He's engaging with these issues in a right-wing way. He's giving credence to the claims that the right is making. And as he does all of this in front of our faces, he gaslights us at the same time and claims that he's the true leftist because the fake left pretends like crime doesn't exist. But, you know, he's a real leftist who won't lie to you about crime like the fake left. It's the amalgamation of a straw man, hubris, and grievance politics that's culminating in a major crash out. And it's genuinely sad to see. But I mean, if he's going to purport to be the arbiter of truth in this space, the rest of us have a right to push back. And I think that Sam Seder and Emma Vigeland's response was perfectly reasonable.
I made it clear to Cenk that he was invited to come on the show and, you know, we can have a debate, we can discuss whatever. I mean, you know, and he made it clear to me that he was not interested in that. He was mad. He was very, very mad about all of it. And I will just say, like, I didn't hear any issue that he had with the stuff that we talk about. He may have issues with me personally. That's fine. I don't care at all.
I mean, I've always maintained that what you cover is just as important.
Well, that's what editorial. That's the
right.
Editorial decision.
Editorial discretion, right? So, like, in any issues we've had with that Venezuela story, which now has been thoroughly debunked.
Any apology about that?
None. It doesn't seem to be the case. But like that, you know, even if you're saying, okay, you know, there's nuance in this story, it's about what you choose to cover and what you choose to give credibility to.
I'm happy to go on that show at any time and debate these issues. But after that, I don't care about any of this. Honestly, it's a waste of my time.
And that right there is the key. Your personal grievances do not matter. What you choose to cover and how you choose to cover it, that does matter, right? We're trying to push back on right-wing narratives while TYT is leaning into them and making all of our jobs harder. YouTuber Jose put out a really thoughtful response to TYT's coverage of the bullshit Venezuelan gang story, which I would highly encourage you to watch, because it demonstrates how TYT played into a bogus right-wing narrative in a way that validated the right's narrative about crime and immigration. Narratives matter. Take a look at this YouGov graphic from 2022. So Americans overestimate the size of minority groups, which means that fear-mongering about these groups are going to be more salient if they're told that they're a threat, since they're perceived as being larger than they are. I mean, they think that trans people make up 21% of the country, but it's 1% in actuality. They think Muslims make up 27% of the country. It is 1% again in actuality. They think that gay people make up 30% of the population. It's just 3%. Now, when you look at this poll from Ipsos, as you can see, people with misinformed views were more likely to vote for Republicans. So if they thought that violent crime rates were at all-time highs or that border crossings weren't at the lowest level in years, then they voted Republican. This is why the issues that we choose to focus on are so important. And it's why we're critical of TYT, because they're focusing on issues that benefit the right, not the left. We have platforms to dispel these myths, but they're feeding into them. Myths about crime and trans people and immigrants, these things need to be debunked. And if you're not doing that as a progressive, if you're feeding that beast, then you shouldn't be confused about why people are taking issue with your content, right? But TYT, like Fox News, is doing just that. They are sensationalizing these stories and feeding those right-wing narratives at the behest of the Republican Party that they're supposed to be fighting. But while they chum it up with the right and parrot their bullshit, they have the audacity to deny that this shift is happening. They're pissing on our legs and telling us it's raining. So he might think that the unpopularity of our positions is hurting the collective left, but in reality, they are the ones that are hurting the left. They can either be the home of progressives or they can be Fox News Light, but you can't have it both ways. And this conflict that we're all seeing has not been reconciled. It's why so many people are speaking out against TYT, not just influencers and commentators, but their own audience members. Because we see the mixed messaging that they're denying. We see the hubris and the personal grievances on full display, and we are calling it out. You can get mad about it if you want, but I don't care about your feelings, Cenk and Anna. I care about the issues and how you are feeding the right-wing narratives that we're trying to combat. So we're going to continue to talk about that because you don't own us and you don't speak for the left. So, I don't know, humble yourselves and maybe drink a tall glass of shut up juice while you're at it.
Ideas. In recovery mode, my brain ideas. In recovery mode, my brain ideas.